You're on.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out for another event. Appreciate it. For those of you who are regulars, this is where I go through the 5 minutes of news and things to do. And for those of you that are new, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoy your evening. As far as our events for the Wake County Libertarian Party, this Saturday at 9 a.m. This Saturday at 9 a.m. we have our Interfaith Food Shuttle event, which we've done before. That's 2 hours of basically you pack the food at the center and then you deliver it at one of the communities that needs it. It's a lot of fun. Afterwards, we'll go to lunch. And then Patrick has arranged for a 1 p.m. tour of the Raleigh Rum Company. And as discussed last time, if I see you at the Raleigh Rum Company and not at the Interfaith Food Shuttle, I will not be pleased with you. So that'll be a lot of fun. Other events, not necessarily WakeLP, on Monday, 23 July, there's a public school forum, and Nick Taylor, who is running for North Carolina House 25 up in the Rocky Mount area, will be representing libertarians on a panel of a Republican, a Democrat, and a libertarian. So that'll be a lot of fun. As far as thank yous, we have a new candidate coordinator. As you may remember, we had Tim Samario for a while, and then life happens as it does. Victoria Carter has agreed to step up. Yay! This is important because I wasn't quite getting the production out of 10 recently that I want. So Victoria will now help me also beat up 10 on a daily basis. We even have a new application to do that with. So anyway, for those of you that are running though, speaking of candidate coordinators and work, please do remember, if you're going to be knocking on doors and doing stuff, things really pick up after Labor Day weekend. Things get very busy after Labor Day weekend. So if you're going to want or pay for door hangers, yard signs, mailers, collateral. If you want that stuff, you need to start saying so now and get in the queue so we can get it to you in a timely fashion. Delivering it to you October 15th will not be helpful. So anyway, with that in mind, if you live in North or South Wake County, Jeff Matemu has bumper stickers and other stuff to hand out. So if you would like to have stuff to hand out along with the stuff that you might be ordering for your own campaign, or if you're a volunteer and you want to work in an area in your neighborhood, please let me know and I'll put you in contact with Jeff Matemu. Our guest speaker this evening is Pastor Vance Haywood. Yay! And he's gonna talk to us. He's been with St. John's MCC for 10 years, but the pastor since January. You know, and this is a lot like the Interfaith Food Shuttle thing we're doing this Saturday. A lot of, you know, said already, I think, some interesting conversations since you sat down. I mean, libertarians believe things can be solved and it doesn't always require a government program. And that's one perspective. And eager to hear Mr. Haywood. Thank you.
Can y'all hear me? Yes. So thank y'all for having me on behalf of St. John's and the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches. I think it's really long. Thank you for having me out. It's really an honor to be here tonight. Thank you for the folks from St. John's that came in and to be a part of the surprise. So I appreciate y'all. To kind of go into this, Patrick asked for me to talk a bit about the role of faith-based organizations in the community, particularly around social issues. So to do that, I want to give you a little bit of a history or go into some of what MCC is. So how many people here have ever even heard of MCC? Okay, yeah, so 2, great, 3. And that's one of the biggest downsides, is that just nobody's heard of us, and that's kind of a fault of our own, because we've been around for 50 years, so we've done something that wasn't quite right to not get our name out there. MCC was founded in '68 in California by a pastor by the name of Reverend Troy Perry, who was a Pentecostal pastor, was defrocked after he came out as homosexual and really ran away from the church, and like many folks that find themselves in similar situations, attempted suicide and several other things that took place, and then along the journey found himself starting a book study or Bible study, and that turned around and became what is now MCC, and that formed in 1968. MCC started with a platform to be a church that was an all-inclusive church for all people. And that was their basic principle in the beginning days, and that has been the overriding principle since then. In those early days, the largest group that we were seeing come in that just had nowhere to go were the LGBT community. So that kind of defined the beginnings of MCC. And in 1968, 2 months into its founding, performed what is the first same-sex marriage ceremony that was performed in the United States. And then it kind of continued from there. In the 80s, the AIDS epidemic became a prevalent thing across the United States. And many churches, many faith-based organizations were shunning people and telling them they weren't welcome there, that they couldn't hold funerals and those sorts of things. So MCC stepped in and performed thousands of funerals. I've talked to some of our pastors over the years, and some of them were doing 5 or 6 funerals a week. And a lot of times for folks they didn't even know, because families were either rejected from being able to use different churches or different funeral homes because of the person living with HIV/AIDS and just the misunderstandings around that. So we saw those things happening. And then MCC held the first international vigil for AIDS awareness in San Diego, and that continues today. And we know that today is World AIDS Day. That was something that was founded and hosted by MCC in San Diego, California. So I say all of that to say the church started out and it kind of got propelled into social justice and into social issues. So when we talk about the work of a faith-based community or a faith-based organization in a community and doing that in the realm of social justice, that's kind of what we've been doing since we got started. That's the whole premise about what we've done. St. John specifically is located here in Raleigh, and it's been here for 42, going on 43 years, and was founded very much the same way in 76 and got its start. And over the years has been a church that really has been about social justice. Again, we haven't done a great job of advertising ourselves because a lot of folks just don't know. And I continuously go to places that folks have never heard of an MCC. So that's why things like this are so important to me, is to be able to get out there and talk, and we get to learn about you and you get to learn about us, and we can talk together as a community and looking at ways we can work together. One of the things that I liked so much about St. John's when I came there, I grew up in a church and went through all of the normal things, coming up Southern Baptist and Pentecostal, and then trying to figure all of this out and understand the God that some people were trying to tell me to go with. And one thing that has always stuck in my mind is something that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, that 11 o'clock on Sunday is the most segregated hour in America. On Sunday mornings when we go to church, that's still our most segregated hour, and that still holds true for the most part today. And one of the things that just astounded me about this church, and still continues to astound me, is the diversity of people that continue to be there on Sunday mornings, coming together to worship. And not just across several racial backgrounds, but across socioeconomic statuses, all faith backgrounds, all denominational backgrounds. There's such a mixture of diversity in the grouping of people that come together there. And as I like to joke with our folks, I tell them, there's no way that many people from that many different backgrounds can come together in one place on a Sunday morning and worship, and God ain't in the middle of it, because they ain't trying to kill each other yet. So we're doing fairly well, I think. So that's one of the things that drew me to that church, and it reaches into the community, trying to do social justice and trying to do and stand up for rights of all people. Some of the programs that we've started, Lunchboxes of Love, one of our bigger ministries that we started probably 8 years ago now, and they started out feeding folks down at Moore Square peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and bag lunches. And I think somebody had mentioned that earlier about dealing with the folks coming in and telling us we couldn't continue handing out food in Moore Square, and they had to combat that, and they do that now at Oak City Outreach Center, since they've got Moore Square all fenced off just so you can get in there. So we started that program. That program today is feeding over 500 people every month, which is phenomenal. We work that in conjunction with the Oak City Outreach Center and then also in conjunction with Love Women's Ministries, and then with the Alliance of Aid Services food bank or food pantry that they have. And together, all of those organizations coming together, we're able to feed 3,800 people or provide meals for 3,800 people every single month, which I think is phenomenal. And really one of the main things that we have tried to embrace and tried to reach out and to start to do in the community. And continuing programs like that, continuing to reach out, and thankfully you guys are coming, I think, in August and planning to help with that feeding down at Lunchbox of Love, and that takes a lot of manpower, people power to pull those things off. So even with all of those goods that we're doing in the community and all of the things that we are doing, there's still so much else out there, and as I like to say, we for whatever reason, over the last several years, have lived in our own closet of sorts because we just still haven't come to the table or haven't been brought to the table in some places, and sometimes you have to demand your place at the table. So we're working on that, working on ways to continue to be in community and to work with organizations to continue to do the work that is called, because there's still a lot of stuff out there, a lot of people out there that need help, and not just from a religious standpoint or a religion standpoint, and that's one of the things that I think is unique. Is we are very much a Christian-based church, but I've seen people of various faith backgrounds come in and worship with us just because we don't force any particular belief system down your throat. As long as you're loving of all people and caring for people and not trying to beat and bash people, then whatever belief system you have is working. So let's just work together and love each other. I think that's what we're called to do. But too many people have been beat up over religion and folks that are promoting religion as opposed to promoting relationship. That's really been our focus this year, is promoting relationships and doing away with this religion thing. If people ask me if I'm religious, and I think, hell no, I'm not religious. Please don't put that on me. That's not something that I identify with. Because religion's been used to hurt people, and it's a lot of man-made objectives and agendas that aren't good for all people. They're good for some people, but they ain't good for all people. And so that's one of the things that we've tried to focus on, and trying to look at ways that we embrace change, embrace love, and embrace one another, and to share that love and to share the good news that is good for all people. So as we move forward and we do things and work in the community, we're trying to find ways to make that work and ways to spread that message of hope. There's roughly 6 people every hour that kill themselves, that take their own life. 22, I believe the last number that's published, that's confirmed, was 22 veterans every single day will take their own life. There's 28 last year, or 28 trans men or women who were murdered for being who they are because they were trans. This year alone, 14 have already been killed, so we're on track this year to meet, if not exceed that number, if we continue on the same track that we're on. And when you look at LGBTQ youth, the polls or studies show us, particularly from Trevor Project, that an LGBT youth is 5 times more likely to try committing suicide than that of their straight peers. Over 40% of trans men and women have attempted suicide at some point in time in their life, and 92% of those were before the age of 25. 40% of a population of people have tried to take their own life because they couldn't reconcile who they were, because of society telling them that they didn't belong or that they were other. Those numbers just don't sit well with me. And then when we look at the millions of folks that live in poverty each and every day, I think 31 some million children go to bed hungry every night here in the United States. Now, all these numbers I'm telling us are from the United States. That's not from some third world country. That's right here at home. So I say all of that to say there is still much work to be done. When we look at this from a faith-based organization, and from a lot of those numbers are driven, and a lot of the hatred and discrimination that has been pushed in this country has been because of faith, or because of religion, in the name of religion. And we have to change that. So when we look at what the role of the faith-based organizations are in the community, one of the first things we have to do is understand and get out to our communities that we're redefining church. we're redefining what that looks like, because that's not what my gospel teaches me. That's not what I understand. And I'm not okay with a God that's going to tell me to hate somebody. If that's what it is, and I don't want nothing to do with that kind of a God or that kind of a faith. So we have to get out and we have to redefine church, because church has become an ugly word for a lot of people. Me putting on this collar, I don't do that too often unless I'm doing speaking engagements or things like that. Because when you walk around with this on, people treat you differently. People all of a sudden don't want to say certain words in front of you, or don't want to say certain things in front of you, because you've been put to a different category. But trying to break those barriers down and get out and teach this mentality of relationship over religion, and teaching relationship with one another, relationship with the God that you understand, with the faith tradition that you understand, but more importantly, that relationship with one another, and seeing that spirituality, seeing that God within each one of us, and understanding that. So we push that and continue to try and muddle through that, and change that narrative where folks aren't afraid of the church. They're not afraid to have this stigma that the church is going to come in and beat and bash you and try to tell you who you're going to be and who you can be and who you can't be, and all these things. So the biggest things for me that I can tell you that faith-based organizations are able to do is to simply start the conversation and simply continue the conversation, to continue and to promote love and to promote wellness and to promote relationship with one another, bringing folks together across all these backgrounds, not judging somebody or guessing somebody. I had somebody today that assumed because I look like this that I preach at a predominantly white church, and I had to stop him and explain to him that that's not the case. I'm sorry, but that's just not it. They make assumptions based on certain things, and so we have to understand that we all can come together, and that we have so much to learn from one another when we sit at the table and we break bread together, or we go to a meeting together and just simply have that conversation. Some of those conversations and some of those things we have to talk about are hard to talk about. But they're things that we have to talk about, because once we understand and we get a chance to hear the stories of so many other people, and we come across these political boundaries, across these religious boundaries, and aren't looking and saying, well, I can't talk to you because you voted for this person in the last election, or I can't talk to you because you're affiliated with this party, or I can't talk to you because you came from this faith background, or you came from that side of the tracks, or because you love this person, or you love multiple people, or whatever it is. We do away with all that stuff and cross all those borders and boundaries and walls. And maybe I don't know what the stance is, but I think most of us here probably agree that building walls is not a great thing to do. Just a guess, but I'm not going to get too deep into the politics side of that. But trying to break those barriers down, break those walls down, because one thing that I tell our folks all the time is that we talk a lot about this wall building. We do not have, if any, very many Trump supporters in our church, so I just throw that out there. We don't get political. We talk about the walls being built, but what I have to remind us of is the walls that we've already built in ourselves. And those walls that we've built that are walls of discrimination, or walls of trying to keep us away from those things that we don't want to talk about because we don't want to know about them. And those things that we can shelter ourselves from, and breaking those walls down, getting ourselves into that uncomfortable space where we can truly grow and we can truly learn, and we can promote love, and we can start to help. We're feeding 3,500 people a month through all the organizations we're working with now. There's 38 million that are going to bed hungry. And you do the math and figure out how many churches there are. I did this once before. There's far more than enough churches to make sure that no child can get home and go to bed not hungry. There's far more than enough churches to make sure that school children don't go hungry during the summer months because there's not food on the table for them. There's far more than enough sanctuary square footage to make sure people, in particular our veterans, aren't sleeping on the streets at night. So when we look at the work of faith-based communities and what faith-based communities communities can do, faith-based organizations can do in our communities, is to go out there and be the church. Forget this idea that the church or that the building is something that we're working. That has nothing, that's the shell of the building. The work that is being done is right here within each one of us. That's what we take out into the community, how we make a difference, and have those conversations. With all that being said, I'll shut up and let y'all ask some questions.
Brad, I think that's working. Verify, find out tomorrow.
First of all, to answer your question, libertarians generally believe that people should be able to live anywhere they want to live, as long as they can afford to pay the rent.
Yes.
Based on your history lesson there, it sounds like when y'all first started out, you were pretty isolated from the point of view of working with other churches and faith-based organizations in North Carolina. But I guess things have improved. I guess that's my question. Have things improved? And maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so things have improved quite a bit over the years. When we started out, I don't know that Unitarian Church was probably one of the only ones at the point that had any inclusive standpoints. Most churches and faith-based organizations were very critical and wouldn't help, particularly with LGBTQ issues. And I was telling one of the folks earlier, most of our churches, as they started up, they started in living rooms. And then as they needed to find larger space to meet in, one of the only places they could find to meet were bars, and predominantly gay bars, because that was one of the only folks that are only places where they would allow folks that identified as LGBTQ to come in and to actually be together, particularly under a faith-based background. And so that really shaped our beginnings in trying to break some of those barriers. I would like to think that some of our work over the years has tried to shake up some of the other churches, some of the other denominations, that has opened the minds. And a lot of the churches now have given more control over to the local parishes or local precincts or local churches individually to kind of pave their own way. There are several that the denomination stance is still very staunch and hasn't really shifted much, but the local church can be a little bit more liberal. And so that brings up a whole new set of issues, but at least we're moving forward. I don't see us on that front, in most cases, moving backwards. The biggest one I think that we saw in most churches are trying to learn from that was the Southern Baptist Association, when it made some very strict changes and some things happened, and several churches split, and it really crippled that denomination. So most have learned from that and understood that, we can't just change all this all overnight. And we had seen some hopeful and promising things coming out of the Catholic Church, but some of that has kind of steered a bit of a different direction lately, and hopefully that's going to change. It's certainly more progressive than it was.
Did you have one, and then we'll go back to him? Thank you for telling me a bar can be a place of worship.
Yes.
Made my day.
Absolutely, it is. And one of the things that happened in Pulse nightclub a few years ago when that shooting occurred, our pastor down there, who actually started at St. John's, she in the news conference, she pointed out very clearly these people were in their sanctuary. They were in their place where they could go to feel comfortable and feel safe and to feel loved. And somebody came in and shot them. So yes, absolutely, church can be wherever.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for coming. This is great. You hit on this briefly, but you mentioned church is not a building. It's not a place to go. We are the church. We are the hands and feet of Christ. So we have actually pawned off taking care of your brothers and sisters and the poor. It's the Great Commission to feed the hungry and to take care of people. And the welfare program run by the government is actually filling the shoes of the church, which is us. So we have actually failed. We can't actually blame the government because it's not their role. That's not what they're supposed to do. There's not supposed to be a welfare program paid for by tax dollars. It is we, the people, taking care of one another. And so you hit on that briefly, and I admire that. I'm wondering if that's kind of how you feel, is that we dropped the ball, and now the government's basically taking the role, which isn't their role to take.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. If we would simply care for one another and take care of one another, if we would go back to that sense of community and able to care for the needs of each other and meet each other's needs, there would be no need for the government to step in. I mean, why do I need the government to step in and say, okay, I'm going to take this amount of your paycheck and give it to the poor for you? If I were doing that to start with, they would never have the reason to have done that. Right. And so, simply put, absolutely, if we would do that. I think the numbers that the Poor People's Campaign put out, just to put this in perspective, the top 400 Americans have more wealth than the combined bottom 64% of Americans. So 400 people have more wealth combined, or between 400 of them than the lowest 64% of the entire country. And that's, again, not necessarily saying the government needs to do, but if we would have that compassion, and we would have that sense of community and sense of caring for one another, then you're right, we wouldn't have to deal with that.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out today. My question, so you touched on this a little bit. You talked about when you were trying to feed the homeless in Moore Square and you were kicked out of Moore Square. What other barriers or challenges do you face trying to help people? And what can we do as a community to help remove those barriers? Because there should be no barriers to you trying to help people.
So the Moore Square was probably the biggest one and made the most headlines simply because they stepped in and said that you couldn't distribute food there anymore and you couldn't do that. We saw that, Love Wins and a few other organizations that had, I think, Church in the Woods or Church in the Park was out here, and a lot of us saw that same stuff happening. And then they got creative with it. I looked the plans up to see what all they were doing in Moore Square because they've got this place barricaded off, and I think it's closed for close to 2 years. I'm not an architect, so I certainly don't proclaim to know what they're doing, but it looked like a really fancy landscape overhaul that they're doing, and it's taking 2 years. And I see them putting up houses across the street from our church in less than a month. I don't necessarily buy that all of that was, but if you build these fences and you keep people out of there for 2 years and they're going to relocate, they're going to have dispersed, they're going to set up camp somewhere else, and then you won't have to worry with it. So now you kind of push them out by default. That's my take on it. That's my personal take on it. I'll clarify that. So I'm certainly not speaking on behalf of anyone when I say that, but my viewpoint is that's an intent. So stuff like that, it's coming in much subtler ways now. It's not as blatant because, if we step out and we say, you can't do this, that's going to get bad publicity because everybody's got a cell phone and now it's going to be Facebook Live and Snapchat or whatever else to do with it. And so that's going to be out there. So we're finding subtler ways to do that. And then just this is a slippery slope, but looking at the gentrification and looking at how we're moving stuff out and making it where folks can't afford to live, and trying to find ways of finding place for people, because a lot of the homeless camps that were set up, most folks don't realize this, but almost every one of the homeless camps that I know of that were here when I first got here no longer exist because we bulldozed those properties and made them inaccessible. But we've not done anything to find a place for people to go. And particularly the men and women. Folks don't realize this, I forget the number, but there were folks that literally died this winter here in Raleigh, living on the streets. And they died from exposure. Had they been in a place, at least in a place that had some shelter from the elements, they would probably still be alive. So that the issues, again, are just more subtle. The things that we can do is just bringing awareness. The other thing that I've seen a lot of places that we're starting to we're looking to relocate ourselves. One of the things we have to be cognizant of is we have more and more folks coming to the church, and one of our goals is to start feeding folks every week at the church and to have a food bank at the church where folks can stop throughout the week. Once folks find that out, not everybody wants you to live in their neighborhood, because you're going to bring these undesirables to their neighborhood. And so that's the other thing. And again, having that conversation, I think, is still the most important part of it, and letting folks know. Because, again, and I've done this myself, put yourself in this little bubble. I don't have to know about it, so it ain't going to bother me. I can shelter myself from it to a degree. So having a conversation.
Okay, I want to push this properly. You see a problem with the anti-Islamic feeling in this country, the anti-Semitic feeling in this country, and an anti-immigrant feeling in this country. I've been all over the world. I've always seen if people, no matter where you go, all right, it seems like we should be opening our doors, and now we're closing. You see problems.
Yes, absolutely. There's a huge problem with that, especially when you're looking at it from a faith background and looking at it from Christianity. We're doing the exact opposite of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to open the doors and take care of people and make sure that we're doing the right things by people. The whole thing with Islam and telling folks that we're not going to accept Muslims to come into the country. And how would we feel if we, another country said we're not going to allow Christians to enter this country? We're not going to allow white people to enter this country. We're not going to allow this group of people. Well, that's the same thing that we're doing when we say that. And we're absolutely against what's going on with the borders now, and especially with what most recently was happening with the children being detained and put in concentration camps, for lack of better terms. And then one of our own congregants, who is a chaplain in the military, he's actually retired now, just recently retired. He's a chaplain and a captain in the Army. His husband was trying to go through the process of becoming legalized here in America. They're already married. They had gotten all the paperwork that needed to be done to keep them on the blisters on the bottom, the soles of his feet where he'd been in the showers at the jail cells that they kept him in, and just like whatever shoes he had to wear, however that was. But he's in the shower and open sores in a shower with 12, 15 guys that are showering there. We know what that can do. And so he had to go and get medical treatment and all these things to make sure he doesn't have MRSA infections or whatever else. So we're really doing it, and it's not just this thing that we see on TV. We're hurting people and we're intentionally costing, from a cost standpoint, that costs the government money to house him for a few days. They cost him money now because he's had to go get medical care that he wouldn't have to have had because he's got wounds and sores. And for what purpose? What was the goal in that? What was the purpose in doing that? And if we're doing that in the background of faith, what faith tells us that we don't welcome people and that we're not open and caring for them? And why do we do that? So we're 100% against the immigration as it stands today in this country, and against telling folks they're not welcome here for whatever backgrounds they want to do.
As a church and nonprofit leader, how do you avoid sending people to the government as an answer? So if somebody says we need to feed the homeless, how do you avoid, as a pastor or as a nonprofit, somebody who's a nonprofit, when people just going, well, yeah, we should take up taxes and feed them. Or we should, as a nonprofit leader, like, oh yeah, we should apply for that government grant and, spend that money and just keep reapplying. How do you avoid those things?
The goal in what we're doing now is trying to, and we so far have not accepted or requested any government funding. That's not something we've done. It's all been private and personal funding. And that's what we're doing now, is working with various organizations that are providing ways of doing that, and by people giving up their time and people giving up the money that they can do. We work with the Sage Group who are coming out and helping with certain things. The AIDS Alliance has their food pantry that we're kind of sheltering and helping each other out. They get food that they can't use, they're presenting it to us, vice versa. So we're helping each other out in those areas. And we're looking now, because we're trying, with us wanting to do this every week, that's obviously going to cost money. And there's just no way around that. We're looking at ways of getting folks to pitch in and to help, and looking at, the churches for a long time have looked to their own congregation and just say, come keep giving, keep giving, keep giving. Well, we can't do that we can't do all of that ourselves. We have to reach out to other organizations and partnering with. One thing I'm absolutely not afraid of is partnering with other churches. And there's this mentality that, if we partner with churches and start doing too much, well, our members might go there, but whatever, I don't care. If you like it better there, that's good. Good for you. As long as we're coming together as a community and doing the work, that's what's important. So trying to build those partnerships, build relationships, and focusing on private revenue sources and funding is the biggest thing. We've got a list of resources individually. So if we've got individuals who need something, we've got a list of resources as opposed to sending them to government agencies for that funding. We can send them to local nonprofits.
In terms of Wake County or maybe Triangle, your experience with the needs of people, could you rank the kinds of assistance that is needed in terms of housing, food, legal assistance, whatever?
All of the above. It's the biggest need. Pretty much. I don't have statistics to say, but I'm 100% sure what the biggest or greatest needs are. I know when we go down and feed folks, that's one big need. But feeding folks isn't the be-all end-all. That's providing a temporary fix. So we're giving you food, we're getting you fed for now, but in 6 hours you're going to be hungry again. What are we doing to help you there? And what are we doing to continue to do that? So looking at programs that are, one of the things we're working with Love Wins and a few other organizations we're trying to do is to put together the foundation we're starting is to look at a resource center that will be a place where folks can come together and learn trades. They can learn how to do resume building. We can find out what their skill sets are so we can go out and help them be productive in their own recoveries of sorts. And trying to get to a point where they're not dependent or they're able to do things on their own. And then with like the SAGE initiative, working with them in their housing initiative, trying to find affordable housing for aging seniors. That's another big gap that we don't really think about. But particularly in Wake County, as the prices are skyrocketing, our seniors are retiring or can't work. Many of them you're seeing work way after the point in time they really should have retired, and they can't find affordable housing. And so that's one of the bigger things too. So it's across the board. I think it's just one problem kind of lends to the other. We have to try and address the root of the issue, and how do we get folks off of the street, out of homelessness? How do we get them to productive work? The other side of it that most folks don't realize is a lot of the homeless community here are LGBT or trans, and trying to work with trans folks on how they get into the workforce. Because a lot of folks, I've talked to a lot of trans men and women, who as soon as they go in for an employment interview, and either they identify by, the employer identifies by visual perception, or they look at their license and it's a different sex than what the person's appearing, they run into a barricade or the wall that shoots up, shoots up, and they now don't get the job or are told that it's called sudden field. So trying to find companies and communities that are open and affirming as well. So there's a whole lot of that. Does that answer your question, kind of, sort of? And I can get you some statistics. The Oak City Outreach Center is really great about that. That's run through the Catholic Charities. So I can get you some information or more information on the particular needs and how that we need to get involved.
So I think we have 2 more questions and then a public service announcement. So my question is, you talked about suicide rates and bullying, especially when you're talking about young people. And obviously it's harder when you're young because you're really not yourself quite yet in school environments. So how have you seen people work to get a school environment that's right? Do you see more people from the LGBT community that are homeschooled or in private school? Or I'm just curious, what have you found with kids, basically?
I've not seen more that are homeschooled or private school. A lot of them are just going through the motions at school and are going through the literal hell that they go through in school in silence a lot of times. And so the numbers we understand with the Trevor Project and other organizations that are out there, that a lot of the numbers we have are just short because we don't know how many kids are really going through those issues. Particularly now with some of the new numbers that are coming out with the folks who have just been living in silence with it and having to try and deal with it. Depending on the area, a lot of this has to do with the area too. In some cases where you see that bullying, there's also not a conducive home environment. So we do see a lot of kids that enter into the social services system, in particular a few of the folks in our church that are foster families, because the kids that are in homes that just aren't conducive to being who they are and that aren't loving, and they get taken out of those homes because it's just a terrible environment. And there's programs out there. The LGBT Center actually has a youth program that happens in the evenings, so kids can be dropped off there, children can be dropped off there after school, and trying to help with that. The Trevor Project's been another great one that's helped with that. The Clemente Foundation for Tyler Clemente, who jumped off the bridge, talked to his mother a good bit when she was here in Raleigh this last fall. And one of the things that she said that really didn't dawn on me, because I just hadn't really thought about this, is that when the children get into those mindsets, a lot of us can sit back and say, well, with all of the technology and everything that's out there, there's resources available. Well, when you get into that mindset and that mind frame, sometimes that when you get in the middle of that storm that you're going through, you don't see the stuff that's around you that can help. And you don't always, she said that's where Tyler was at before he took his life, because he just couldn't see the resources that were there to help him. So getting the education out there and allowing folks to know and then educating folks so they see the warning signs. I mean, the suicide one is one that bothers me the most because it's very preventable. And that one is just, it's so sad to see that many kids that are taking their lives. So there's programs out there like the LGBT Center. There's need for more programs. There's need for education in schools. We're very fortunate here in the Raleigh area because we have a very diverse group of people, and so we are light years ahead. If you step out a couple of counties in North Carolina, you take a sharp turn and step 50 years backwards. And folks don't like to think about that, but you really do. And some of our churches, I've talked to them, and particularly some of the ones out west in North Carolina, and they're the only church in the entire county or few county region that's an open and affirming church. The other churches there just won't accept you. And so, I mean, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We get kind of isolated in our own little bubble here in Wake County, and we think that things aren't quite as bad, but you step outside of the Wake County area, and there's some areas that really are 50 years in the past. Did that answer your question? Sorry. Okay.
Hi, my name's Oliver. So one of the things that really struck me when you were speaking is about how a church wouldn't perform a funeral. Historically, I guess one of the greatest reasons for the early church's growth was that they were burying people. So a lot of, at that time, that burial was just an incredibly difficult thing to find. So it's about dignity, giving people dignity where they are, not necessarily looking for them to change, but just being interested in their dignity. So I just want to thank you for giving people dignity. Okay. Yeah. I also want to, a lot of times in political realms, because this is a political meeting, to be clear, Republicans and Democrats sort of throw things back and forth, and we're sick of it, and that's why we all left where we left. But this recent border crisis, we're very correct in saying that it's horrible for parents to be divided from their children. But the incarceration rates in the United States, this is why I say Republicans and Democrats are totally disingenuous about the whole thing. We have up to 1/3 of America's black children at any given time, their parents is in jail. And about 50% of those being for nonviolent, victimless crimes. So I have to say, and my degree's in biblical studies, so one thing that has disillusioned me about the church and myself is that we totally forsook our charge and our responsibility, to Mr. Drew's point, that we gave it up. When Dr. King and all of that, we got the Civil Rights Act, we said, well, the government's got it now. And we gave it up. We forgot the moral imperative, and then we allowed the government to say, well, they do it so well. Well, most people here don't agree with that. So, anyway, I would give the call, and this is one of the things, Patrick, David, all the people in the EC, the Executive Committee, have made a point that each month they do something that is real for people and they call us to be part of that. We do not have a successful libertarian future unless y'all get out and start working.
That's
Just like the church doesn't have any successful future unless they start giving the dignity back.
Yeah, that's it.
So I want to both thank you and thank you.
Coretta Scott King said something that I do want to share with you, and I guess that was the last question. Or there was. Yeah, Coretta Scott King said something. She said, it doesn't matter how strong your opinions are, if you don't use your power for positive change, you are indeed part of the problem. So to reiterate what you're saying, you know, our silence really is violence, and that's something I tell folks. If we know that there's an issue and we don't do something about it, that's our, you know, we shouldn't rely on the government to step in and fix it. Because I think they have proven they aren't capable of fixing pretty much anything. That's my opinion.
So I don't have a wall that keeps thank you, but a wall keeps there.
Okay.
Not a question, so you can be at ease, Reverend. It's kind of along the social justice category. There's a meeting, a town hall meeting that Congressman Price is having tomorrow at Broughton High School at 6:30. I've been told by Tom Howe that Barbara Howe has been encouraged to attend. Barbara is running against Mr. Price. She's been encouraged to attend by some immigrant rights groups, and there's something called the Sanctuary 6. There's apparently 6 people that are in sanctuaries in Durham County. They're not drug dealers, they're not criminals, they're just regular people that happen to be here without the proper papers according to the federal government. So anyway, I encourage people who can to attend the meeting. We've been asked to wear white in support of the immigrants with Sanctuary 6. So 6:30, Brown High School, which is on St. Mary Street, just down the road here. And I was planning on going as a candidate just to ask Congressman Price when he's going to vote to repeal the AUMF so they can bring our troops home. I don't expect he'll give me a good answer. I'll even get an opportunity to ask a question.
What's the subject of the meeting? The subject of the meeting?
It's a town hall.
Just general.
It's Congressman David Price's town hall.
All right, and to speak on the sanctuary churches, just so y'all know, this was a shocking number for me. There's 6 or 8 sanctuary churches in North Carolina. I believe we are the largest or the second largest number of sanctuary churches in the entire country in this state, which is sad. There's only 6 or 8 of them, and we've got more than any other state. And those sanctuary churches are vitally important. So that's another way that we can help is finding
every church should be a sanctuary church.
Absolutely, and finding ways to help support them.
I don't have the microphone anymore.
You want this?
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. We also do a plant last house. Maybe I made some assumptions I shouldn't have. Patrick suggested we give you one of our t-shirts.
Nice. David.
I'm not familiar with one of kind of a libertarian animal because you're really not fooling with you until you fool with it. When you fool with it, it doesn't work out so well. So, thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it.
Dave, you dropped something, man. Oh,
It's a tag. Promise we'll be fine.
great. That's cool. Are we